A voice on the video says in Arabic, "I am transmitting these scenes to you from the heart of the American capital, Washington."
9/11, what went on there? Was it exactly what we were told? That some undetectable hijacking genii took control of some planes and destroyed some important landmarks in New York City, killed 3,000 people, somehow got rid of all the surveillance footage, were brilliantly funded, didn't have any connection to the Bush family, no connection to Saudi Arabia? Well, guess what? Some recently unsealed documents, and I wonder what's in all of these sealed documents, whether they pertain to Pfizer, whether they pertain to the military-industrial complex, whether they pertain to peculiar relationships between political figures, deep state agencies, and maybe people that have their own private sex islands. It's interesting to ponder that perhaps what's in sealed documents everywhere, that once unsealed, would radicalize you and make you a little less compliant. It's an interesting thing to think about. Certainly this new revelation has damaged my trust in the establishment, which, I'll be honest with you, wasn't that strong anyway. So this is the revelation that Saudi Arabia likely have strong ties to the 9/11 attacks. And indeed, it is 9/11 victims that want this investigated further. In the same way that apparently the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre, I never tire of saying they deserve a great deal of sympathy and they deserve a great deal of compensation. Surely the same sympathy and compensation is owed to the victims of 9/11. And they seem to be, at very least, curious about what Saudi Arabia's involvement was in 9/11 and what, in particular, the Bush family's relationship with Saudi Arabia was, and whether or not there's more to 9/11 than meets the eye. And perhaps those of us that from the beginning were a little curious about 9/11 and how such an extraordinary plot was enacted, how it was reported on, how Building 7 was reported on as having fallen down while it was still visible in the background of the BBC shot. So many questions about 9/11. In fact, it was perhaps the moment that a new world was born. After 9/11, it became legitimized to surveil. It became legitimized to inquire, spy, censor and control. It became legitimized to go to war in Iraq and in the Middle East. In a sense, when that tower, those towers, came down, a new world was born of its ashes and we live in it yet. And thanks to the revelations of the likes of Manning, Snowden, Assange, we have a different understanding of what the function of government is. It is to censor, it is to surveil, it is to control, it is to prevent us from waking up in our pods like Neo, realizing we can't trust them and becoming radicalized. And every time an envelope like this one, envelope, is unsealed, more questions come out, don't they?
2 decades ago, the 9/11 Commission found that Al-Qaeda acted alone. But victims' families say that is not true, pointing to this video and other evidence as proof. They are suing Saudi Arabia, claiming its government provided crucial assistance to the hijackers and planners behind the September 11th attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people. 60 Minutes correspondent Cecilia Vega reports.
A voice on the video says in Arabic, "I am transmitting these scenes to you from the heart of the American capital, Washington."
So this is an unsealed piece of evidence. You know that classified documentation of various kinds contains information so extraordinary and explosive, whether you're watching me right now in Canada or Germany or Australia or America, wherever you are, you know that if you had access to the clandestine information in your country, let's just pick a few subjects: assassination of presidents, terrorist attacks like 9/11, your country's occupation and invasion of foreign territories that they probably had no business invading, events during the pandemic, measures that were taken, promises that were given, profits that were made. If you had access to that information, you might become a bit less compliant. Now, it's extraordinary to watch this tape because it seems like just someone having a, at first glance, rather lovely holiday, travelling around Manhattan and enjoying some landmarks. And if we didn't know what was about to happen next, perhaps we would leave it there. But we now know that this is a significant piece of evidence that ties Saudi Arabia to those attacks, and who knows what other deep state interests and other nations and financial interests and families might be involved in the 9/11 attacks. Let me know in the chat, baby. We're always interested to hear your opinion. But what we can certainly testify to as one is that the truth, as Julian Assange revealed, would probably make you a little less compliant. And that's the nature of the dynamic. You will become ungovernable if you know what they're doing.
This video, unsealed in federal court this week and obtained by 60 Minutes, was recorded in the summer of 1999. The man behind the camera is Omar al-Bayoumi.
It's quite nice the way he talks to him. Greeting to you, beloved, esteemed brothers. They've got a nice vernacular, I'll say that for them, and seems like a pretty sweet guy. Right up until the point where, needlessly, thousands of people had to be murdered. For what? And by whom? And how?
Who the FBI says was an operative of the Saudi intelligence service with close ties to two of the 9/11 hijackers.
Capital time is 6 p.m.
The video was filmed over several days.
Why do you guys think this is coming out now? Why do you think we're getting these revelations now? What do you think this is being used to distract us from? What do you think it's being used as a valve for? How do you think this will be deployed? How do you think that this will make you annoyed? Let me know what you believe.
Bayoumi recorded entrances and exits of the Capitol, security posts, a model of the building.
This is the pre-internet age, or at least the pre-social media and complex modern version of the internet. You just wouldn't do, right, okay, attacking that, blow that up. It's such a clear bit of evidence, isn't it? It's such a vital piece of evidence.
And nearby landmarks. In this portion of the video, Bayoumi points out the Washington Monument and says, "I will get over there and report to you in detail what is there." He also notes the airport is not far away.
Pretty chilling, that bit.
What I see Bayoumi doing is going out and making a detailed video record of the Capitol from all its sides.
Someone in the chat, Saudi Arabia dropping the petrodollar. Is this their BRICS revelation? Is this to do with the growing number of nations that are joining the BRICS de-dollarization movement? Let me know in the chat if you think that this is about that.
And then conducting that 360-degree panoramic view.
Some people saying no hijackers, no planes. You know, like, this is, I suppose, what's interesting as there are further and further revelations on a subject like 9/11 or the pandemic or whatever, is that you start with, well, this is what can be corroborated. This is what they're telling us. It's definitely not true. What they're telling us is definitely not true. What do some of these sealed documents seem to suggest? Oh, wow, there's some sort of degree of conspiracy, collaboration, other organizations appear to be involved. Oh my God, what are they holding back then? And this is when you get tempted to speculate and conject. And I'm pretty sympathetic to people that go, well, this group must be involved and maybe this happened. But when all we know that the Building 7, they expected us to believe that the passports were found in the ashes. There were so many sort of ludicrous and extraordinary sort of symbols and moments and tidbits in that story. And no wonder no one trusted them. In a sense, even if you go a bit off key with a conspiracy theory, remember like people at the beginning of COVID that were going, it's a. I remember thinking, no, you're going too far now. I bet what it is they've just not done enough research on it. But my God, look at what came out. And anyway, the sort of mood is correct. The point you're taken to, even by conspiracy theories that are not true, is this. Don't trust the government. They're lying to you. Don't trust the media. They're amplifying the message of the government. Unite, oppose, become disobedient. You get that idea. What you don't want to get from the conspiracy theories is like, well, there's no point doing anything. I'm not going to trust anyone. You're controlled opposition. Then you've gone back in a circle to being useless again. We can't continue to bring you this beautiful content without the support of our partners. You guys know that I love the Hallow app, and we're very happy that they are one of our sponsors. I do the rosary every day, but there are 100,000 audio prayers and meditations and music and all sorts of things on there. Now, Hallow are starting their summer Bible study with Jeff Cavins, guest on the show, brilliant scholar and teacher, and Jonathan Rumi, who portrays our Lord and Saviour in The Chosen. This is a Bible study based on the Gospel of John, a beautiful telling of Jesus' divinity as God, with amazing miracles like the wedding at Cana and the feeding of the 5,000, stories that you know well. Now, if you'd like to join me right now in June for this Bible study, you can by downloading Hallow for free. And if you want to become a subscriber, you can get 3 months free by using this code, hallow.com/brand. That's hallow.com/brand. You get 3 months free for that. This is it. That's the Daily Rosary. Today, Sorrowful Mysteries. You can hear old Jonathan on there. It's magnificent. In fact, you can choose different people, but I would never be disloyal to Jonathan. Join us on Hallow. Click the link in the description. Back to the content.
GS-11.
Richard Lambert is a retired FBI agent who led the initial 9/11 investigation in San Diego, where Bayoumi and the two hijackers lived temporarily before the attacks. He He's now a consultant on the case filed by the 9/11 families.
If you've ever flown into Washington, D.C., one of the first things you see on the horizon is the Washington Monument. So if you know where your other targets are in terms of the Washington Monument, it helps guide you to your intended target.
Right, sort of like following an umbrella at a theme park.
Federal investigators believe the hijackers on Flight 93, which crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, had the U.S. Capitol as their likely target. The lawyers for the 9/11 families and former intelligence analysts we spoke to believe portions of the video show Bayoumi surveilling the Capitol as part of that plan. And in the video, he references a, quote, plan.
You said that in the plan. What plan?
It was just planned to go on a nice holiday. We're looking to go on a nice holiday. What is the problem? Why are you so cynical about my lovely home video?
Who is he talking to?
What do you think he's talking about?
I think he's talking to the al-Qaeda planners who tasked him to take the pre-operational surveillance video of the intended target.
So this video is taken in late June and early July of 1999. What does that timing tell you?
Well, that means it was taken within 90 days of the time when senior al-Qaeda planners reached the decision that the Capitol would be a target of the 9/11 attacks.
That's when Osama bin Laden decided to approve Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's so-called planes operation.
Osama bin Laden, looking pretty good. The other dude, a little bit shabby. A little bit Ron Jeremy. A little bit of an attack from Ron Jeremy there. Bin Laden is in the cave, he's in camo, looking pretty dope. The other guy, shabby. That's after his arrest. Oh, well, fair enough.
In the days after 9/11, British police discovered the video during a raid on Bayoumi's UK apartment. They also seized Bayoumi's handwritten address book that the lawyers for the 9/11 families say was filled with phone numbers of numerous senior Saudi officials who were in the government at the time. And when Bayoumi filmed the Washington video, he was often with two Saudi diplomats who the FBI says had ties to al-Qaeda.
They're walking a bit weird, aren't they? Why are they marching like that? Why are they standing so close to each other?
What is the point of that pelvic marching?
Two men marching like that present a much smaller target than two men marching like that.
They're marching a bit close to each other, these two diplomats. There's no need for that. God, it makes you wonder. I mean, again, at the time and when it was just plain, straight, neat, this is an attack on our territory. This is the first time American soil has been attacked since Pearl Harbor. All of that stuff. And then you get these documents. We need a Pearl Harbor-like event to legitimize all of these foreign wars that then did eventually happen. Oh, man. And then what happens to people that report on the sort of lack of morality and downright corruption that did take place during the subsequent wars after this? Those people go to prison without trial and are only released, well, just about half an hour ago. And why? Why now?
A finding the Saudi government disputes.
Well, it is another very large brick in a massive wall of evidence that at this point indicates the Saudi government was complicit in the 9/11 attacks.
Ken Williams is a retired FBI agent who led the 9/11 investigation in Phoenix.
Ken, can you just walk across this shot? I don't like it, but I'll do it. Would you walk with another diplomat just like an inch behind you? That I will not do. I'm a Fed, ma'am.
Where one of the hijackers attended flight school. He's also a consultant on the case filed by the 9/11 families.
In terms of all the revelations that have come out as part of this 9/11 lawsuit, where does this video rank?
I think it ranks right at the top of the pile.
The government of Saudi Arabia says, nothing to see here, this is a tourist video. This is a guy out looking at the sights in Washington, D.C.
I would vehemently disagree with that. This is not a tourist video.
I think we can agree that. I'm having a lovely holiday. Here are my men, my friends, marching in unison. Here are some significant landmarks. There is airport. This is all good for the plan. And by plan, I mean holiday that I'm having.
The British police are believed to have turned over the video to the FBI shortly after 9/11, which raises the question, why, after more than 20 years, is it just now surfacing?
Did somebody really mess this up? This seems like a really big thing to just being made public.
It's funny that we just accept that you're supposed to keep all that stuff secret. Don't tell people that the don't work. Don't tell people that the lockdowns were always just to break down social cohesion. Don't tell people that a global cadre is secretly running the world. Don't tell people that these wars are being used to keep people in a state of fear. I don't like being told stuff. 60 Minutes meant to be the news. Nora O'Donnell, who actually she's doing a damn fine job.
If that was missed, then shame on us for missing it. If it wasn't missed, then I would have to ask the question, what was done with it?
That was Cecilia Vega reporting, and CBS News reached out to the FBI, which says it will not comment about ongoing litigation. Both the Saudi government and Omar al-Bayoumi deny any involvement in 9/11, and lawyers for the government have filed a motion to dismiss the case.
That's cool. He's actually still alive, Bayoumi. That's pretty dope. This is the time of revelations, no? This is the time of awakening. Let's have a look at some other information on this story. Of the 19 al-Qaeda terrorists who hijacked 4 US commercial airliners on the morning of 9/11, 15 were citizens of Saudi Arabia, and of course Osama bin Laden was a member of one of Saudi Arabia's wealthiest families. Immediately after the attacks, the Bush administration downplayed the Saudi connection and suppressed evidence that might link powerful Saudis to the funding of Islamic extremism and terrorism. Do you remember in like Michael Moore's film Fahrenheit 9/11, it talked about how they were all flown out urgently, that there were these financial ties between the Bushes and bin Ladens and all sorts of stuff that was baffling. And that was a relatively mainstream film at the time. Like Michael Moore could put out a film like Fahrenheit 9/11 and be like, this is interesting. Like now, you can't talk about this stuff. I suppose there's so much information available that it's all kind of just adrift and lost, and it's very difficult to get it to coalesce into a pinnacle or spike of potential action. Action like, don't vote for these people anymore. Don't cooperate with these people anymore. Find something in yourself that empowers you to transcend the various imprisonments and incarcerations that impose on you, either culturally or literally. Surely we can bind together. But, it's very difficult because the world has sort of gotten worse. 9/11, yeah, Michael Moore's a idiot, you're saying that, man, but like Michael Moore at the time was saying, I don't know what they're telling you about 9/11, some shady shit's going down. And you might say, well, I think it's this degree of shady shit, and I think it's these secret agencies, and I think it's this agenda. But ultimately, you can't get to a point of alliance with other people that are like, yeah, that was dodgy, man. That's a reason to never trust the establishment ever again. Immediately after the attack, the Bush administration downplayed the Saudi connection, of course. The Bush White House didn't want to upset its relationship with one of the world's largest oil-producing nations, which was also an American ally with enormous political influence in Washington, and much of what the FBI discovered about possible Saudi links to the attacks remains secret even today. Right, even say, what's that information? What is that? What do you imagine that is? Maybe some of you are right. Maybe there are different nations' secret services involved in what went on there. Let us learn from the release of Assange that it's okay to inquire and investigate. There was nothing wrong with putting forward theories. Nothing wrong with conspiracy theories, actually. There's no tangible reason why you should inquire and risk making an error in your hypotheses. Let's get out there and discuss this stuff. The links between the House of Bush and the House of Saud are deep, overlapping, and notoriously opaque. The Saudi investment in the Carlyle Group, the private equity firm whose rainmakers included George Bush Sr., the Saudi bankrolling of Poppy's presidential library, the lucrative contracts of the Saudis doled out to Halliburton when Dick Cheney was at the company's helm. The main law firm retained by the Saudis to defend them against the 9/11 families was Baker Botts, as in James Baker, the Bush family consigliere. And of course there's oil. The black glue connecting all these dots. Nice work over there at CBS. Why don't we call it black glue? Saudi investment firms poured money into Bush Sr.'s oil business, and the country provided the US with invaluable support in the first Gulf War. Bush Sr. shouldn't have an oil business. Like, when you've got a president starting a war with an oil-rich nation, and he's got in the oil business, that makes you think, should we have civil servants that don't have a vested interest in these wars? Yeah, let's write that down. Have that guy that asked that question killed. Would you deal with it? Author and journalist Craig Unger documents $1.4 billion that's made its way from the Saudi royal family to entities tied to the Bush family. Just made its way, like those two guys, those two Saudis, just marching down the street like they're in a Talking Heads video. Unger contends the documented oil holdings and affiliations of both Bush presidents has led to a policy of inaction in the post-September 11 world. 2 days after 9/11, Saudi Arabia's influential ambassador to Washington, Prince Bandar bin Sultan, met with Bush at the White House, and the two men smoked cigars, nothing wrong with that, on the Truman balcony, just enjoying a couple of cigars in the wake of a terrible, defining epochal event. Over the next few days, the Saudis were allowed to collect more than 160 Saudi officials, including relatives of Osama bin Laden, from around the US and fly them on chartered jets to Saudi Arabia. Some even received an FBI escort to the airport. Isn't it weird how Alex Jones is like attacked in the way that he is when he's the dude? Like, you know, it was mad what he said about Sandy Hook, and he said that. But isn't it also mad, if you're thinking about victims' families and protecting the families of victims, that Alex Jones went, oh, the Twin Towers are going to get blown up, and there's some guy called Osama bin Laden, and there'll be links to the deep state. Before it happened!
We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun. If you do it, we're going to blame you because we know who's up to it. Or if you let some terrorist group do it, like the World Trade Center, we know who to blame. If any terrorism comes, it's from this government. And if there was an outside threat like a bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s.
And then during that whole period, Saudis are getting all flown out of the country and stuff. Some weird dark shit went on. Whatever 9/11 was, it wasn't what they said it was. And I remember actually going on UK television and someone goes, do you think 9/11 was... And I goes, I don't trust the American government. Right? And I was like, it was like one of those things like, you can't say that. It was when I was sort of awakening to all this stuff, I suppose. Awakening in the old pod. Well, the FBI suspected Omar al-Bayoumi was a Saudi intelligence officer. Went to, you think, from his holiday videos. And now for my next holiday, I think what I might do is go to the Pentagon and turn off these surveillance cameras. When the two hijackers arrived in LA in January 2000, al-Bayoumi met them in a restaurant, took them to San Diego, probably to go to the zoo and set them up in an apartment, co-signing the lease and advanced them $1,500 for rent. I'd be hard-pushed to do that for my very best friends. Will you underwrite my lease, mate? Well, mate, that means if you don't pay your rent, I'm going to drop. And you are obviously not going to be paying this rent because, remember... What? What's going to stop you paying the rent? Well, you're not going to be able to because you're going to actually be committing harikiri, killing yourself in a suicide bomber attack. Oh, yeah, no, fair enough, actually, yeah. Wait, where's that money? Hey, give my money back. You owe me $1,500. During 2000 and 2001, al-Bayoumi received about $3,000 a month through several intermediaries from Prince Bandar's wife. What's going on, man? Many suspect some of this cash was passed on to the hijackers. Live it up, fellas. Bandar has also been accused by Zacarias Musari, the so-called 20th hijacker, of being one of Al-Qaeda's donors in the run-up to the attacks. We've gone to raise some funding. It's $500 a plate. George Clooney is coming. George Clooney is not coming to that one. He's going to the Biden one. What goes around comes around. So there you go. More information about 9/11. It might not be conspiratorial enough, but in the wake of the Julian Assange release, we have to look now at all of the pieces that make up our paradigm and scrutinise what we were told and what was true. Hey, you told us this about the pandemic, and this turned out to be true. Hey, you told us this about 9/11, and this turned out to be true. You told us this about the Middle Eastern wars, and this turned out to be true. We're coming to one conclusion. We can't trust you lot, can we? We're going to get rid of you and do something entirely different. Hey, but that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and the chat.
Hey, this is exciting. We've got a great partner today. It's Rumble. But beyond Rumble, it's Rumble's latest venture. Let me ask you first, are you a Sleepy Joe type character with zero cognitive performance, struggling to muster focus and brain power for basic things like running the United States of America? You've got to stop drinking woke liberal coffee that hates you and your way of life and start your day by drinking Rumble's very own 1775 coffee. This is going to be the best tasting coffee you've ever had. Seriously good, ethically sourced from a family farm in the high altitude mountains of Bolivia. Not in the Bolivian lowlands run not by a family but by a single man still living with a pet. No! Instead of waking up and drinking your big corporation owned woke ideology coffee that's probably making you sick from the pesticides it's sprayed with, try Rumble's 1775 revolutionary coffee. Support freedom of speech. Build a parallel economy that actually values you and loves you. My favourite? It's dark, of course. I've always found the lure of the dark irresistible. I'm sorry, how can I stay mad at you? You're just going to have to wait over there for a little while. Level up your morning routine with a 1775 coffee. Sleep all night knowing your hard-earned dollary dues are going towards supporting freedom-loving creators like me on Rumble. Visit 1775coffee.com now, pick up your first bag, use the code BRAND to save 10% on your first order. Oh, come on. Why choose, you know? We're going to leave you now, guys, so if you're watching from the screen, consider becoming an Awaken Wonder and gain early access to some of our interviews with
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.